So we then, what did we do? I guess this was right before Christmas. Continue to understand Advent. We said, what should Catholics really be focused on during Advent, and what distractions often compete or interfere with this focus? And we watched a little clip from a Charlie Brown Christmas, where Charlie Brown gets all frustrated because he bought that lousy tree and he was getting teased. Even Snoopy was laughing at him. And he asked, isn't there anybody who can tell me what Christmas is all about? And Linus says, sure, Charlie Brown, I can tell you what Christmas is all about. And he goes out and he delivers on stage right out of Matthew, okay? And it was a great rendition of the New Testament, talking about the birth of Christ right there. And now you know that it's not only about the birth of Christ, but it's also about the second coming, and a focus on John the Baptist for that reason, and corporal works of mercy. So it's a little bit more than what Linus said, but can't jam everything into a short cartoon movie, you know. All right, so what else did we do? We read The Joy of God's Love from America Magazine. We watched a video from Matthew Kelly, and we discussed what you learned about Advent in the past 3 weeks, why we celebrate Advent, and just kind of rounded everything out. That's what we did. And we read some New Testament passages, Luke, the Nativity, the presentation, and finding Jesus in the temple. And the reason I read those is with those three, along with the Annunciation and the Visitation, now you know all 5 of the mysteries of joy in the Rosary. Okay, that's what they are. You probably don't remember all that, but that's okay. You know, the important thing is that you keep your ears open and you're listening with ears of faith, like we talked about in our first class, ears of faith, right? And little by little, this stuff starts to make more sense, and it'll reconnect with you as you come across material as you get older. Maybe sometimes you'll think back to what you learned in this class and say, oh yeah, I remember we learned a little bit about that. And there's plenty of time in your young lives to learn more about your Catholic faith, and I hope you do as you move forward through life. Very important. Look at what's happening in the world, guys. You know, we could be looking at a World War III if we're not careful with what's going on in the world. And as much as we got to keep trying and believe in our leaders, it's just one more reminder about when you rely too heavily on mankind, you know, you're going to be disappointed sometimes. Okay. And, you know, it's once again, we're going through this. So this is where having that strong faith in God and understanding Jesus Christ is going to be your guide throughout your life. Very, very important. When times are great, maybe you feel like you don't need this. I hope you don't feel that way ever, but I can understand where when things are sailing along, you know, summertime and the living is easy, as the song goes, okay? But certainly during difficult times, it's really important to have that foundation of faith. And well, you'll see what I'm talking about if you haven't already. I think you guys understand this just because you're engaged and thankful about these classes. That's good. All right, so then what do? We took a break for Christmas. We came back and it was the Epiphany. We learned about the Epiphany and the word epiphany, okay? What does it mean in English when someone has an epiphany? It's a moment when you suddenly feel that you understand or suddenly become conscious of something, okay? But in the Catholic faith, it's about an event, and it's the same word. It's the manifestation of Christ to the Gentiles, who were the non-Jews, as represented by the Magi. Who were the Magi? They were the 3 kings. We 3 kings from Orient are. And they just were following that star. They stopped in Jerusalem. They talked with Herod, who had bad intentions, okay? And they continued on. They followed that star until it stopped over the manger, and they were present for the nativity, okay? And that was huge because they were non-Jewish people. They were from the East, and they were considered Gentiles, And that was the opening understanding, even when Christ was an infant, that this new Christianity was going to be open to the Gentiles. It's open to everybody. That's what Catholic means, right? Universal, all right, like we learned last week in our class. So the manifestation of Christ to the Gentiles as represented by the Magi, and that is the Epiphany, and we celebrate that. And that's essentially the end of the Christmas season, okay? We watched a message from Fulton Sheen, Archbishop Fulton Sheen, who's since he's passed away a long time ago, on the Epiphany. It was just some music and some scenes and some different words that he shared with us, and we talked about that. All right, so then we had an exercise. What are some things you can commit yourselves to do during the 2021 new year, because it was January now, to practice being an adult member of the Catholic Church, and you shared some good things, okay? Going back to church, praying more, devoting more time to God were some of the things that you came up with, okay? And we read from New Testament, Matthew and Ephesians, St. Paul's letter to the Ephesians, and then we learned a bunch of test questions. Okay, so that was that. Then we went into the following class, which was kind of an eye-opener now. This is at the end of January, so it was maybe about a month ago or so. And the theme was the battle, light and darkness, good and evil. Why we take our Catholicism and prayer life seriously. This is serious business. We talked about what does it mean when we say the best defense is a strong offense? Well, when you're having bad thoughts or having difficult times, anxious about things, worried about things, maybe getting led down the wrong path by different forces in your life, the best defense against that is a strong offense, turning to God through prayer and receiving the sacraments and developing that personal relationship with Christ. If you're doing that, that's an offensive move, and you're defending yourself against the other guy there that we don't really want to have influence us and lead us to sin, okay? We watched a video called Into the Breach by the Knights of Columbus, and it was a brief video. There's a series of videos associated with Into the Breach, but this was the introduction, and there was a very attention-grabbing scene where one of the bishops says, hey, not only does God have a plan for you in your life, but so does Satan. And, that's why, and then he went on to talk about how important praying the rosary is and things that he does to go to battle in that battle of good and evil. Important to learn how to pray. And that's why we spent 3 classes on that, okay? We watched a couple of videos from Matthew Kelly, short ones, Move Toward the Light and Character is Destiny. Those were very interesting, moving videos by Matthew Kelly, okay, complete with his Australian accent or New Zealand or wherever he's from. And then we said, well, what does the above information have to do with good and evil and the importance of prayer? And we talked about all those things. Defending against the devil through prayer came back, okay? And what else? We did our safe environment video that night, okay? And we also read a few different passages from the New Testament, the baptism of Jesus, the temptation, and then call of the first disciples, because things happen fast, okay? After Christ is baptized, he goes out into the desert, comes back, he begins his mission, okay, right then. And he's calling those disciples, and they're dropping what they're doing, their livelihood, fishermen, whatever they were doing, and they're dropping what they're doing, and they're following him. Okay, and that was that class. All right, now we're getting very close here. So the last 3 classes we had were on social justice. Okay, social justice, race, religion, and gender equality. From the Catholic perspective, tried to tie it into your faith. And we learned about the word bigotry, okay? Intolerance towards those who hold different opinions from yourself. It's fine to, have disagreement, not see eye to eye on certain things, but being intolerant is where we get into trouble in the world, okay? And boy, are we in trouble in the world right now, our country and the world. So that's what's happening, unfortunately. And we said, what do we know? Not what do we think, but what do we know about Christ's position on equality from the New Testament, okay? And we read passages, Acts of the Apostles. Actually, we skipped that and we went right into the letter from St. Paul to the Corinthians, first letter on love. And we read a passage from Luke. I can't remember what that was, though, and I don't have the title right here in front of me. But we also, the material in this class was an article, The Knights of Columbus versus the Ku Klux Klan from 100 years ago. Unfortunately, a lot of things just haven't really fully changed. They have improved, but we're not there where we need to be. And then on a brighter note, we watched a short video on Martin Luther King in Simsbury, Connecticut. We learned, how that experience, and we learned it from his own letters home to his mom and dad, how that was such an eye-opening experience. He decided he wanted to become a minister. He became the leader, the spiritual leader for the group there on the Culbro tobacco farms. So that was one huge step, but it was that whole experience that many believe, and I fully understand why they feel this way, that was the seed that was planted for his I Have a Dream speech, which is probably his most famous speech. And you should be proud of that. That happened here in Connecticut. Okay. And then we said, what material most connected with you tonight? When or where do you experience conflicts, challenges, or difficulty accepting tonight's message? We learned about Catholic meaning universal, open to all. All right, and then we went into another class on the same subject, only this next class, we focused on gender equality. So the first class was mostly race and religion, because don't forget, the Ku Klux Klan wasn't only after blacks, they hated Catholics, okay? Even though they considered themselves Christians, their burning cross, okay? But they were after Catholics, and that's why those two groups, the Knights of Columbus and the Ku Klux Klan, went to battle so often, and brutal too. We read about someone getting shot in the head, a Protestant minister shooting a Catholic priest to death. And then the trial, and the guy who shot him was let off because of the number of Ku Klux Klan members involved in the jury and the judge himself, okay? That's our history, I hate to say it, in this country, but it was a part of the way things were back then. So things definitely have improved. We're not there yet. We got to keep working towards justice, social justice, okay? All right, so what else then? We read, in this class was about gender, and we read Jamie Waters' 2 articles, A Biblical Model for Women Preachers and The Women Who Followed Christ, multiple women who were so important in such strong faith in Christ. She put a great argument together for why women should be considered to be able to preach. Went back to the Samaritan woman in the well, and we read that passage and understood where she got that background from to support her position in those articles, all right? And then we read Jesus, a Pilgrimage. We read more about different women in the Bible, James Martin again, and then we watched a video called Closer Than You Think from Matthew Kelly, and that was about the evil of gossip and how we have to be careful with what we say. By the way, being careful with what you say and what comes out of your mouth, okay, was pretty much the subject of all the readings today in Mass, which if we have a moment, I will share a little bit of that with you, because we're very close to finishing our summary here. I hope you guys are paying attention. You're very quiet. I'm not asking any questions, and I'm doing a lot of talking, but I hope this is helpful for you, those of you who missed class and those of you who are hopefully remembering a lot about what we talked about, because we did cover a lot of stuff. All right. Got your feedback on what was important to you in those social justice classes. And am I missing a class here? How could this be? Could not have missed a class. 13. Oh, that was our Super Bowl class. That was our Super Bowl class, and we just had a short class, and we kind of summarized our social justice classes. So this was kind of the second time that we've gone over some of these things. Yeah, so that's our summary, and got a couple of minutes left, so why not read? Hey, for those of you who remember really early on in our classes, our very first class was called persecution and solidarity. Okay, we learned those words and what they mean, and about making choices, and about cyberbullying and other things you want to avoid. You want to avoid, continue to avoid. And we then went into avoiding judgment was our second class, and we learned, we read from Matthew about Christ saying, how can you judge your brother? How can you point out the speck in his eye when you have a plank in your own? And we learned that a plank is a wooden beam, right? And, you know, is Christ, you know, trying to drive home a point? You know, how could you possibly help somebody carefully removing a speck from their eye when you have a plank in your own eye and can't see? So it's about avoiding judging other people harshly, okay? And, you know, that's certainly a very important tenet of our Catholic faith, right from Christ, avoiding judgment. And we read a section in Matthew called Avoiding Judgment, all right? So today's gospel is out of Luke, but it's the same story told in different words, and it goes like this. Jesus told his disciples a parable. Can a blind person guide a blind person? Will not both fall into a pit? No disciple is superior to the teacher, but when fully trained, every disciple will be like his teacher. Why do you notice the splinter in your brother's eye, but do not perceive the wooden beam in your own? How can you say to your brother, brother, let me remove that splinter in your eye, when you do not even notice the wooden beam in your own eye? You hypocrite, remove the wooden beam from your eye first, then you will see clearly to remove the splinter in your brother's eye. He goes on, this is Christ. A good tree does not bear rotten fruit, nor does a rotten tree bear good fruit. For every tree is known by its own fruit. For people do not pick figs from thorn bushes, nor do they gather grapes from brambles. A good person, out of the store of goodness in his heart, produces good. And that goes as far as what you say, too. But an evil person, out of a store of evil, produces evil. For from the fullness of the heart, the mouth speaks. Okay, amen. All right, so did that help as far as a quick summary of what we've learned for a good portion of the CCD year?
Yeah, that helped.
Yeah.
Yes.
And did you remember a fair amount of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Most of it, yeah.
That's great. That's good news. That's music to my ear. You must be listening with ears of faith. Okay, that's good. All right, so I want you to have a wonderful week and get ready. It's all new material from here on out. We're going to do 6 weeks. Each class is special. And if you continue to pay attention, you're going to come away with a lot of really good information that will help you strengthen your faith, help you to become strong adults in the Catholic Church, and it will help you in life an awful lot too. That's my hope anyway. So thanks for listening and have a wonderful week all.
Mr. Bruckner.
Bye. Thank you. Have a nice night.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Mr. Bruckner.
Yes.
Thank you.
When is the confirmation? What date?
Okay, so I believe I sent something out. I'm quite sure it's going to be in the fall. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, so don't worry about it. You don't need to make plans or yeah, okay.
Thank
All right.
you.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
you're gonna be all set to go, and then we'll probably get together next year in the fall briefly, just to get you warmed up for your confirmation. And of course, we'll have dress rehearsals and all that. Nothing to worry about. It'll be fun. Okay, it'll be a great
Thank you.
experience. Okay, have a good week. Thank you. Yep. Bye bye.